In the first weeks, we start with the daily flow, which is really this time analysis. So every day they write down how they're allocating their time. And then there are two reflective questions in the template. One says, of all the tasks that I've accomplished today, which one should tomorrow do somebody else better than me? And so every day you reflect that. And in some days you find nothing, and in some days you find something. And when something pops up 3-4 times, well, then you have a pattern there, and then you are ready to delegate that. And the second question is, if tomorrow I would live more freely and more intentionally, what would I do?
Are you looking for ways to shorten your marketing learning curve and help your organization survive and thrive? Welcome to Relish This, the Purpose Marketing Podcast, a show for purpose-focused leaders who want to use marketing techniques to fuel their organization's growth. If you're a returning listener and you haven't subscribed already, we'd love to have you. Also, please consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Now here's your host, author and marketing specialist, Stu Swineford.
Hey everybody, Stu here. What if you could have your organization truly work for you? And what I mean by that is work in such a way that you have a high degree of confidence that everything is going to be okay, that you're moving in the right direction at all times, and that you can actually take time off from your business in order to refresh and relax and maybe even work on the business instead of in the business. That's what my guest today, his organization really does. Simon Severino is the CEO of Strategy Sprints, and they typically work with SaaS companies, agencies, etc., to help them kind of supercharge their systems and develop operational efficiencies that enable them to grow exponentially. They really make the promise of doubling your revenue in the first 90 days, and they work in this 90-day sprint mentality, and they help organizations of all types really figure out how to inject that oxygen into their mechanisms to further their growth and to be able to do more good in the world. It's a really great episode, just filled with information and actionable elements that you can apply to your business at any time. I think you're going to love it. I'm really excited to take on some of these ideas myself. And here we go. Simon, how are you doing today?
Hey, Stu, excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining me today. I know you are coming from the EU. Is that right?
Yes, from Vienna, Austria.
Vienna, Austria. That's fantastic. You are my first overseas guest, I believe. So welcome to the show. It's later in the evening there, and it just is morning here where I am here in the States. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chat today.
Yeah, absolutely. The world is a village.
Yes, it certainly is. It's really becoming a lot smaller, and we're fortunate to have such great technology at our fingertips here to be able to facilitate these kinds of conversations. So you are the CEO of Strategy Sprints, and one of the promises that you make is helping people kind of double their revenue in the first 90 days of working with your crew. I'd love to learn a little bit more about what you do at Strategy Sprints and how you help people kind of achieve that kind of growth so quickly.
Sure. Especially right now in these very dynamic markets, funky markets, there are two things that are really important. One is, the oxygen of the system, and the other one is resilience. How can we organize in order that we can react to new situations quickly? And so the first one, resilience, is really, okay, how much oxygen does the system need at any time? Mm-hmm. And that is really sales. For a nonprofit has the same situation like a VC and the same situation as a marketing agency or somebody building software. You need oxygen in the system, and that's the cash flow. And you are asking people for it. Hey, I would like your money. That's right. A sales situation. And it's not easy. It's complex. It's not always fun. And so many people right now are struggling. And we coach those people with one-to-one coaching in making it more enjoyable to ask for money, to get money, and to manage money, because that's the oxygen of the system, so that they can then stay in their zone of genius and do what they really like to do longer and better and with more impact.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. It's interesting. We all do have a relationship with money, and whether that's a healthy or unhealthy or positive or negative relationship, we all tend to have to engage with money. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you help people with that relationship. What are some of the coaching components that you take people through to kind of adjust or help them, create a better relationship with money?
So money for everybody, it's something different, right? And you can fill it with meaning. It is per se meaningless. It is a container of energy. It is stored energy, stored life force, stored value exchange that can be stored, in gold, in fiat money, in Bitcoin, in whatever. The real thing here is, how do we cultivate relationships that are nurturing, that are impactful? Because where value flows, money flows later on also.
Right.
In a healthy system, right? So the relationship is at the core of everything. And most people, when they start the 90 days sprint coaching with us, they are doing too many things at once. They're spread too thin. And so they lose really energy. They are more tired. They are less excited about what they do, and they are less open to receiving information. They have less energy to really listen for a long period. So what we do is we start with operations.
Okay.
This is a word, well, many people say, what is operations? I don't do operations. It's the core delivery of whatever you do. Whatever your magic is, that's operations. Like maybe you help unfunded people get funded. Maybe you help regions in the world having higher financial literacy. Maybe you help artists find donors. Whatever you do, that's operations. And so we start with the operations and see, okay, who is doing what and what takes energy from you, what gives you energy right now. Write down, how are you using your time tomorrow? And so when we do that, they usually find some low-hanging fruits and say, oh, this thing doesn't give me any energy. It just drains me. I hate it.
Right.
I don't like doing the books. And so we can see, do you really need to do it? Because you have many options. So first one, is it important? Because if it's not important, we can cut it.
Right.
If it is important, we can outsource it, external. We can delegate it, internal. We can automate it, giving it to software. And so as you can see, we have many options. So we go through, how do you allocate your time? How do you create the flow of your day? And then we help them reflect what gives you energy, what takes energy, what is high leverage. It's really moving the mission forward. And what is low leverage is something that can be easily automated, delegated.
Right. So that's a really great place for pretty much everyone to start, is just looking at what you do in any given day, and make adjustments based upon that importance piece. What's the next step of the process once you've kind of stripped away all of the items that are either unimportant or can be given to another teammate, whether that's like you said, an automated teammate or someone in-house or external? Is it essentially just honing focus at that point?
Now that you have identified what you want to get rid of, now we have the buy-in for the sprint coach to help you systemize.
Okay.
Now you are ready for bigger things. Now you are ready to hold more complexity, because we will help you get rid of that, either systemize, delegate, outsource, or cut. And now you have 10 to 14 hours more time per week.
Okay.
With these hours, we want you to work in your zone of genius on the things that are high leverage for the mission. And high leverage things are working on the vision, on the culture, hiring and firing,
Mm-hmm.
performance systems, how we onboard people, how the experience of working with you looks like. And so whenever you identify, okay, I want to get rid of bookkeeping, then we will help you write down, okay, what's the process of bookkeeping?
Right.
What is step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And so we help you write it down and put it into one repository. We call it the playbook, where you have your marketing section, operations section, sales section, management section, and then we will put it in there. That's a management task, subcategory financials, subcategory admin, and this is where we will put it in. And now, as you can see, week by week, you will get rid of stuff, but the whole organization will become more resilient and more self-adaptive, because now stuff is written down. So
Mm-hmm.
if you go on holiday, the system is still capable of learning, adapting, and acting.
Yeah, that's great. I love that in terms of the ability to make sure that you've documented everything. That's, and I had a guest on the show actually not too long ago who was all about operations and creating systems and processes. And so this is certainly just completely aligned with that idea that if you can get it out of your head and get it into a system, that it becomes something that's repeatable and that someone else can take over. And I think that as leaders of organizations, that tends to be that piece that we miss so much, because it's in our head. We know how to do it. We don't necessarily do a great job of documenting those processes. Is there, once everything is on paper and or digitally written down, what do you take people through next in terms of that journey?
Now that they have an engine, a machine working for them, well, first of all, now they can take long holidays and enjoy life again.
Mm-hmm.
And also we have now more time to work on the business, which
Right.
is now really where our expertise comes in as strategy sprinters. Now we can really work on the business of business, which is working on form, fit, and function of your operations, form, fit, and function of your marketing systems, form, fit, and function of your sales systems. So how do you find donors? How do you onboard clients? How do you spread the message? All these things, we have now the capacity to work with you on higher leverage things. And
Mm-hmm.
higher leverage things are strategic cooperations. Your list of your 100 dream cooperation partners,
Mm-hmm.
and then really starting working with them. 1 huge per year and 48 small per year. That's one of the things that we implement with our clients, so that you really have teams out there spreading your message, your mission. Because that's the most elegant way to do sales, if you want, in the modern age, is just having people who think that what you are offering is a great thing and they tell others about it.
Right. Yeah, we call that the inspire phase of the stakeholder life cycle, where you're really doing two things. And the first one is trying to get repeat business, so sell more to the people who already love you, and then get those people to evangelize about your organization, and go out and spread the word and tell people that they need to be working with you. So that's kind of a referral or just kind of grassroots message sharing that people can engage in. And I think you're absolutely right. It's one of the most, it's the lowest hanging fruit really for any organization is how do you get people to help you spread that message. What
It's elegant, it's cheap, and it's honest, and it's authentic.
yeah.
And so it's usually one of the sales components that we have implement. And if they say, but I don't have a network, we even run masterminds with up to 65 people in there where they can find their referral partners via us.
Right. That's amazing. It sounds like you have a pretty well-oiled machine there that you're running, as well as a really great system for enabling people to achieve some growth in that first 90 days. In your organization, do you typically work with people on an ongoing basis, or is it all about that first sprint?
We improve things in 90 days. And after these 90 days, they have all systems in place, and the systems, they keep working. So they don't need us after 90 days, really.
Okay.
Some they want to use our referral teams, our masterminds, and then they hang around for the masterminds because that's still valuable for them.
Okay.
And that's a year-long subscription to our masterminds. But most people, they do a 90-day sprint, and then they have an engine that's working, and they continue on their own and are fine.
Right. What are some of the pitfalls or the ways that people can engage with you and not see the success that they would normally like to achieve during the course of that initial 90-day sprint?
One thing that you need in place is a CRM. The CRM it sounds boring, but it's really where all the magic comes together, because it's the place where the follow-up takes place, and we have defined sales and impact as being relationships and the quality of those relationships. So you need one place where these relationships really get cultivated, reflected, and moved forward. And that's your CRM. So if there is one thing that would break a sprint is a team doesn't have or doesn't use a CRM. It takes really 1 hour to implement a CRM system. Whatever tool you pick, it's fine.
Right.
The principles are just having a pipeline, defining the stages of the relationship with you, an awareness stage and an interest stage, a ready to work together, a working together, and a retainment stage and a referral stage or cooperation stage. And then you have your phases mapped out. And now it's about living them every day, and everybody in the team really using that, so that again, it becomes a system. It becomes a habit that everybody really wants to elevate relationships via conversations, and these conversations get really managed and nurtured and taken seriously.
How do you help leaders with that challenge that I know many struggle with, which is the letting go piece, where particularly in startups and early phase organizations, the kind of the visionary or CEO type person has done everything through through the course of or during the course of the initial phases of business. What does your team do to help people with the idea that letting go of some things or all the things is a valuable exercise?
Yeah, that's why it takes 90 days, because in the first weeks, we start with the daily flow, which is really this time analysis. So every day they write down how they're allocating their time. And then there are two reflective questions in the template. One says, of all the tasks that I've accomplished today, which one should tomorrow do somebody else better than me? And so every day you reflect that. And in some days you find nothing, and in some days you find something. And when something pops up 3-4 times, well, then you have a pattern there, and then you are ready to delegate that. And the second question is, if tomorrow I would live more freely and more intentionally, what would I do? This is usually where you get reminded of your dreams and bigger things that you wanted to do. Oh, I wanted to write a book. Oh, I wanted to visit Nepal. The things that you usually forget in the day-to-day,
right,
they pop up again. And so this is the process. We have 3 habits: daily habit, weekly habit, monthly habit. And the strategy sprints method is really just doing these 3 things. The daily habit is writing down how you allocate your time and reflecting on those 2 questions before in the evening when you close down your working day. You reflect on these 2 questions and you write down the flow of tomorrow. That's the 1 habit.
Right.
So when you come in tomorrow morning, you have your flow designed according to your needs.
Right.
And then the weekly habit is getting all the important numbers, marketing numbers, operations numbers, sales numbers, reported in a simple and yet helpful way. And then the monthly habit is checking, are we really moving the vision forward in the right way with the right people in the right with the right formats. And then that's the monthly. So if you do the daily, weekly, and monthly habit, basically you have now feedback loops in place that wherever you are and whatever you do, you will improve week by week. You will learn more about you. You will estimate better. You will make use of your time better. And so basically, you can only move forward from there. And that's the sprint. 7 days sprint, 7 days sprint, 7 days sprint. And every week you get 1% better because you are learning about yourself.
Yeah, that's super cool. I know that I have, as part of my daily practice, I have a reflection, but I like the idea of adding this sort of aspirational component to it. Like what would make things, where do I really want to go, and what would make things better if I were to be thinking about that kind of aspirational piece. That's a really cool addition to kind of a daily reflection. So it sounds like you kind of have some pieces from some different frameworks. Is there a something that you relied on early on to kind of develop your systems? It has kind of some components of traction or EOS in it. It feels like.
Of course. And Gino Wickman, he got this from his mentors, and their mentors got it from their mentors.
Sure.
We are all embedded in a very long stream of management experience. The teacher of my teacher was Peter Drucker.
Okay.
And so he was the first one who took the concept of management really seriously, to say, hey, this is a craft. This is something that we can process. We can make this a habit. We can understand what is management, and we can improve it. And since Peter Drucker, many great minds like, Gino Wickman, definitely, Verne Harnish, who else did we have? Jay Abraham. Many great minds have taken these things to the practice, right, and have done thousands of hours in implementing these principles of what is management. And yes, we are informed by all of these things. I'm 20 years now on the ground coaching. My clients, they have all had coaches and mentors, etc. So they had tools, I had tools, and we probably brought together the best of the last 20 years of whatever was working in the field.
That's awesome. I really like this blended approach, as well as just the understanding that there are very few things that are truly unique in terms of how, what works for a business. Business people have had businesses for literally thousands of years, right? So those practices that work tend to work over and over again, and just developing your own system that takes those components of other systems and leverages those is certainly something to really look at and understand. One of the things I found with Gino Wickman versus Verne Harnish was essentially they have a very similar approach to their two different methodologies. And if you kind of break them down, it's all doing the same thing, which to me makes me feel a lot more confident about just choosing one or the other of those particular systems or any of the other kind of business operation systems that are out there, because they're effectively doing the same things. They're just doing it a little bit differently. So it's cool to see how we can all kind of take the pieces of a system and make them work for us. So in that 90 days, in that first 90-day sprint, what should the outcomes that people should be setting their sights on? What are the goals of those sprints aside from the kind of the revenue impacts? Are there any other takeaways that people should be expecting when they work with your team?
Yeah, the goal is to enjoy your business again, to really have a great life, and your business being a vehicle to create meaning, freedom, and wealth every month for everybody. That's the ultimate goal of a sprint coach and their client. How do we get there? First, by freeing up time. So you have to regain your time out of the weeds. And then with that time, improving form, fit, and function of the sales system, form, fit, and function of the marketing systems. Because this is where you oil the machine and you make it really resilient. If you look at the things that are really resilient right now in the world, for example, Bitcoin, there is nothing that is not embedded in the organization. You can remove every single person. The founder, nobody knows who's the founder. Nobody cares who's the founder.
Right.
There is a pseudonym, Satoshi Nakamoto, and probably it's a team of people, but nobody cares, and it's really absolutely not important. Why? Because the governance structure is resilient. There are a ton of healing mechanisms, and the healing mechanisms in there are all built in by design. That's what I mean working on the business. So
Right.
Whoever created that 6 pages PDF did an amazing work, and this is something that everybody of us should study. It's just the first half of a page is really important, and then the rest is just how to implement it. The first 6 sentences are: there is a problem in the world, it's double spending, we have a proposal how to do that, how to solve that, and the proposal is a peer-to-peer exchange system that is immutable and freely accessible to all. That's it. 5 sentences that have created something that will probably be in 15 years the new store of value for the world, and the first global and inclusive monetary system. It's 5 sentences, and everybody can go on holiday and it still works.
Right.
And this is the most resilient organization on the planet. It can be banned in China, it still works. It becomes stronger in Texas, for example. And in other countries, it's just stronger. So you want to have these principles in your organization. Whatever your organization is, there is the purpose of the organization, and then there are resilience loops in there, self-healing mechanisms and self-learning mechanisms, and you have them distributed. It's not you, and everything is on you. And if you sleep, nothing happens. And if you go on holidays, everything breaks apart.
Right. So you and your team really help your clients figure out that statement that then becomes this kind of driving mechanism behind what the value that they're bringing to the world. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's distilling the magic that is usually created by the passion of the founders, and then extrapolating it from the founders so that the founder move from being the star to being the galaxy.
Gotcha.
Where all the stars shine, and you can touch the magic in every conversation with every team member. And this is the moment where you get more attractive to the outside, and more people will want to be in your team. because they can make it their own. They say, hey, this is my mission. I identify with this. This is me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're touching on so many things that are just kind of really important for any organization to have, and facilitating, those organizations that may have gotten a little stale to kind of get back to that passion that they had when they first started up. So it's really interesting. What kind of time commitment do you typically recommend people have when they start working with your team during that first 90-day sprint?
It's really intense. It will be the most intense project of that quarter. And so we pick our clients based on if they can really allocate that intensity.
Mm-hmm.
Because the owner will need 1 hour per day for the next 90 days. But their team, one person from operations, one from marketing, one from sales, they will need 4 hours per day each into doing that stuff, because it's a sprint. It's not talking about things, it's building things and testing
Mm-hmm.
things and improving things. So in one session, we will talk about the vision, and then the next 4 hours will be building the prototype, testing it 3 times, and then coming back with the numbers, again, reflecting based on these numbers, and then defining the next direction. So it's the most intense thing that will happen to them. And that's
Right.
why it works, because everybody's on fire and is passionate, and you can feel it from the far that this team has momentum.
Right. What happens with smaller teams that, for example, if you're more of a startup organization and you don't have, let's say you're sitting in all of those seats, is that an organization that would be ready to engage with your systems, or do people need to have a more refined, mature organization with multiple teammates in place?
We have many solopreneurs doing this, and they have maybe just one assistant. It's one person and one assistant.
Okay.
But they're doing impactful things in the world. And now they realize, oops, I am now the bottleneck here. I am the obstacle to our growth. So how can I multiply? How can I become, from being the dancer, how can I become the dance floor? And so we start in week 1, they write down how they allocate their time, and then they identify, I should delegate this. I want to automate that. I want to outsource that.
Right.
And so we help them identify what to outsource, delegate next. And so from week to week, they start peeling off that hero mode and becoming more of the dance floor where the party happens.
Right.
And so week by week, they start bringing in more people. And at the end, for example, one very cool solopreneur who just sprinted, in the last week, he said, I'm now ready for a COO. And then he hired the first person who became his COO. And then he was really relieved. He said, well, it's the first time I can imagine somebody else runs my business.
Right. That's amazing. I think that getting to that place rather, of freedom, where you do, it just opens up so many more choices where you can really focus your time on those items that matter most. I know a lot of executive directors, they tend to get kind of caught up in day-to-day operations when they, the real value that they bring to the organization is, let's say fundraising, and particularly, big ticket fundraising. And so just enabling people to see that and figure out ways to enable themselves to stay focused on those things that matter the most for their businesses. That seems like such a win, that it's really cool to hear how your team is helping people achieve that. From a nonprofit standpoint, I know that you focus mostly on SaaS and agencies and and those types of organizations. But when you look into the nonprofit space, where do you see most opportunity lying in an initial sprint?
Every platform has different stakeholders. So, for example, we have worked with a venture capital platform who wanted to have a very distributed system. They have founders in there, they have investors in there, and they have experts. So you have three different groups of people with different needs, and they needed to become the platform that brings all of this together without paying any single of them, but making it possible for the people to exchange needs and exchange value in a non-monetary form. So they have created a token that is a sweat equity and is codifying the transactions. I give you time and I give you knowledge. How can we codify that? They worked on this in a sprint. Another platform helps creating social impact. So they are globally, and every country did a sprint in terms of how can we get our message across better, because we hate sales, we hate marketing, but we have to get our message across. And so how can we make that something that is true and honest and enjoyable?
And so your team helped them figure out how to systematize that component of their, I guess that would be their marketing in effect, or sales.
Yeah, fundraising. Yeah.
Okay.
How do we systemize fundraising, and how do we make that repeatable? Because fundraising was basically just having lunch with people.
Right.
But
That's
it's much more than that.
not scalable, right? Yeah.
It's not scalable.
Yeah.
And it wasn't bringing in enough oxygen for a long-term survival. So they needed more oxygen in the system so that they can have impact. And so when you go to somebody and say, I want your money to make the world better, this is a sales situation. So we went over the whole process. What's your sales technique? How do you document it in the CRM? What's the follow-up? What's the next action? How can you make it easier for them to get it and to do it, what you want them to do? And then what do you do with the relationship? How do you go deeper into that relationship and create a ton of value? Not just, okay, thank you for your $30,000, bye-bye.
Right.
But how do you nurture that relationship?
Wow, and you get to that in that first 90 days. That's fantastic. And I'm intrigued for sure. It's really an interesting idea on how to help people change their behaviors, and I love that you have a system for that. In fact, that's just great. How many different people are on your team when somebody engages with strategy sprints? What should that expectation be in terms of is it just a single point of contact with one coach, or do you have a variety of different teammates kind of helping with different aspects of one's business?
Yeah, so the clients, they get one sprint coach that has exactly that experience and that superpower that they need. For example, a SaaS company gets somebody who has scaled the SaaS business. A company who needs a funding superpower will get somebody who has done funding with great results. And so the cool thing of having the strategy sprints team around the globe and having certified strategy sprints coaches basically in every time zone is that I am now able, back to being the dance floor, right? I have so many dancers, and I am able to find the song and the dancer that fit together. And that's the cool thing, because in my old model, I had consultants and I had to push consultants onto a project. Hey, you have time, you do that project.
Right.
It was the worst model ever, but traditional consulting still operates that way, and it is so broken in many ways. So what I have now is a much smarter system for everybody, because the right problem gets the right superpower to be solved, and that's a win-win-win. And my
Yeah,
job is
absolutely.
just to hold that energy, to hold and nurture that platform, and to make that platform inviting and evolving, and again having self-healing and self-learning mechanisms in there, so that we grow with the challenges of the world. We stay sharp, we stay humble, we stay learning, and we can serve people where they really need it.
Oh, that's great. Well, when you recognized the challenges that you were experiencing with your team, what what was that breakthrough moment for you where you what was that aha moment in terms of the just putting consultants on jobs based upon their availability? What turned the corner for you on that?
The first model was broken because they were on payroll. And so when you have a ton of people on payroll, you start getting lardy and you
Yep.
want to be lean. And these funky years, these have shown everybody how important it is to have lean. So instead of having fixed costs, you want to have variable costs. The
Okay.
more work you have, the more costs, but it's project related costs. The less work you have, the less costs. That's a resilient P&L. That's a resilient company.
Okay.
You can scale it up, you can scale it down. So the first model was broken because it was lardy, and even in months with less projects, we had still huge costs. And that's
Because
the
all
most
those people
stupid,
were on
stupid
payroll.
way. Exactly. And that's the most
Yeah.
stupid way to run a company. And I think in 2022, we don't need to do that anymore. So so that model, I have shifted from taking basically every fixed cost and making it a variable cost.
Okay.
No headquarters, no payroll, autonomous, old people opting in to projects because they are the best on it, not because it's the only way they can earn a living.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's great. That's a really cool way to look at that system and allow it to be it's so much more flexible. It can expand and contract as needed as opposed to being so rigid.
And that's a living system. And the markets are living system. The markets are people, and people
Yeah.
change, their life changes, their needs change. Your organization needs to change with them. So you need to be expandable and contractible. Otherwise, you will be too stiff. People will feel it, and they say, "Oh, you just push your stuff on me, your
Right.
solution."
Right. Right.
So that was the first model. The second model, I said, all right, let's do it a network. It's just very autonomous, great consultants. They just want to come together to have better clients, better projects.
Right.
And that was the network thing. It solved the first two problems of the fixed costs and of being lardy, but it created a new problem that in a network you don't have enough cohesiveness and you don't have enough commitment. It's too loose.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in one network, you are usually also in 7 other networks,
Right.
and then the energy is lost.
Right.
And when you need them, they don't have the time because they have not allocated capacity for that. So the network model was also broken. And I said, how can I have a network with more commitment, with more quality control, with more capacity planning?
Mm-hmm.
So how can I bring the best of both worlds, of the legacy world and of the network and autonomous world, project-based world, without the bureaucracy and the lardiness and the slowliness?
Right.
And that was completely unknown to me. So for a couple of months, I was wandering and just thinking in nature,
Right. Right.
walking and thinking this question. And then it came at once and says, it's a franchise model. It's a certification model.
Uh-huh.
Create a course, teach the people. They are autonomous, they run their own business, but on top of that, they want to have that project that is exactly their superpower. That's a certification model. And then I was walking by a McDonald's and so, hey, it's a franchise model. The business model is a franchise model. Every country has a McDonald's. And they are all operated according to the same rules, but they operate autonomously in their own region.
Right.
And so I was like, what if that could apply to my world? And then we did that. So now every Monday there is the coach meeting. All coaches come together. But then every other day of the week, they operate in their own country and they crush it there. And on top of that, the systems that they learn with us on Monday, they also apply to building their own businesses. They run their own platforms and softwares, etc., businesses. And it all flows together. So we are a frontier team. We learn from each other, but we are not the bosses of each other. Everybody is an autonomous, wonderful being bringing in their superpowers.
It just sounds like a really cool model. I know that you need to get to a meeting, so I would love to continue our conversation, but I know that you need to go. And I've had such a great time chatting with you and learning more about your systems as well as how people can kind of apply this idea to their own businesses. How can people find out more about you and get in touch?
I have distilled the last 18 years of this into a book. It's called Strategy Sprints. You can buy it everywhere you can buy books. And if you want to explore more how we can coach you to be more in your zone of genius and get rid of the rest, hop over to strategysprints.com and click any buttons that bring you on a call with us. And I'm happy to answer your questions.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I like to end all of my conversations with an action ask. I love having discussions and talking about things, but at the end of the day, I want people to take action. And if you had to ask people to do one thing after listening to our show today, what would that thing be?
Do your time analysis. So download the spreadsheet. It's on strategysprints.com/tools. It's the daily flow. So strategysprints.com/tools, you download the daily flow and you start writing down how you have spent today's time. And then you fill out the 2 reflective questions. What will you delegate? And what if you would live more freely? And do that for 3 days. That's my ask.
Okay.
You will learn about yourself.
Well, I will commit to doing that for 3 days. I already track my time and have this in mind, but I really like the mindset shift of how can I, have this aspirational piece of it as well. So I will commit to that. I hope that all of the listeners will commit to that as well. And I have just had a really fun time chatting with you today, Simon. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It was a pleasure. And thank you. And keep rolling, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye. And there you have it, another great episode of Relish This. Thanks again for listening. You can find past episodes of the show at relishthis.org. And remember, if you liked what you heard today, please subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information on purpose marketing, grab your free copy of my book, Mission Uncomfortable: How Nonprofits Can Embrace Purpose-Driven Marketing to Survive and Thrive. Get your copy now at missionuncomfortablebook.com. Thanks again for listening. Come back next week, won't you?